Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel. Hope everybody's doing fine out there tonight. Been hanging out here with my brother's and his wife's dog. I've told you that I'm up here at the remote location in Largo, Florida. The dog's name is Kobe, not named after the basketball player. And you start to realize that this dog it wants you to do things at certain times. This dog is definitely locked into a certain pattern every day. And I can tell you, just by how the dog has been treating me and how it's behaved a little bit, not to say that Kobe's been a bad dog by no means. But you can just tell that there are certain things that are supposed to happen at certain times of the day. Even though dogs can't tell time, like humans, they have some sort of internal body clock. Maybe like, when you go to sleep and you set the alarm and your body wakes up like a minute before the alarm goes off. Something like that. There must be something like that in dogs as well. And I've read, and I've actually talked to my brother and his wife about this, about how dogs like patterns. They like a schedule. They don't like it that things are varied from day to day to day. You get into a set schedule, dogs like that predictability. They're very structured, and that's what I think makes them different from cats, because cats are kind of like off on their own. Dogs, they're much more a people animal. And what's funny is I don't get up as early as, for example, my sister-in-law does. I know that she sometimes gets up at 6 in the morning, and she'll go out and she'll let Kobe run up and down the sidewalk when it's still dark out. Me, I don't get up at 6 in the morning. But I can tell when I get up in the morning later that the dog is still wanting to go out and do that. He looks a little stressed when I don't allow him to do that. It's just weird, funny stuff that I forget about since I don't have any pets. I don't really want the burden of house training them, and then if they get sick, having to take them to the vet. I just don't want to have anything to do with it. If I'm going to get into that, then I'm actually going to have human children, not dog children. So it's just funny that I've noticed that in the last 5 days of being over here. That the dog, I can tell, around 9:30 at night, he's used to going out front and walking up and down the street, sniffing the mailbox poles and fire hydrants and everything else. He just knows. It's the same thing every night. I can tell the behavior changes right at the right time, and I know that if my brother and his wife were here, that's what they'd be doing at right that time. That's what they'd be doing with them. My pattern's a little different, and so I think the dog is just a little confused and probably a little stressed because of it. Hey, I'm doing my best. What can I tell you? But he and I getting along just fine. So let's get to the show. I want to go over something. I didn't think yesterday toward the end of the show I gave enough time to the mathematics, just the simple mathematics of what it would take for Donald Trump to win. And I want to go over those again a little bit more slowly so you can understand. And I know numbers and adding and subtracting are hard for you out there to visualize from a radio show. But I want you to see how hard it is going to be for Donald Trump to win just because. Just because. Not even getting into the politics of it and whether he's likable, how likable Hillary is, anything else. The most votes that a Republican president, popular votes, individual people votes, a Republican has ever gotten was in 2004 with George W. Bush, got about 64 million of the popular vote. That record was then broken by 62 million. I'm sorry. 62 million, George W. Bush, 2004. John Kerry that year got 59 million. So George W. Bush beat him by 3 million in the popular vote, won the Electoral College just by a little bit. We now know that Ohio was the state that really tipped it one way or the other. Then that record of 62 million was broken by a lot by Barack Obama in 2008, when he got about 68, 69 million of the popular vote and blew out John McCain. John McCain got about, 57 million, something like that. In the 50s, he was in the 50s. So he dropped down by about at least 55 million of the popular vote from 2004 to 2008. Then in 2012, Barack Obama, 64, 65 million. His popular vote dropped down about 4 million. And the popular vote for Mitt Romney went up. And I think he got to somewhere around 60. So he still got, and these are just rough figures, but just want to give you the landscape of this. So in the last 3 elections, Republicans have gotten 62 million, 57, 55, 56, 57 million, and then about 60 million with Mitt Romney. The Democrats have gone 59, 68, 65. So you can see over the span, the Democrat presidential candidate has gotten quite a bit more votes than the Republican candidate. And there was no real third-party candidate to speak of. Unlike maybe in 2000 with George W. Bush and Al Gore, and then there was, what's his name? I can't think of his name right now. Anyway, you can see then the problem just structurally that any Republican candidate would have. So it comes down to how many votes do you think that Hillary Clinton is going to get popular vote, because we know that the popular vote and the Electoral College go very closely hand in hand. We know that in 2000 that wasn't quite the case. But generally, 95% of the time, whoever wins the popular vote is going to win the electoral vote as well. So how many votes do you think that Hillary Clinton is going to get? See, my idea is that she's going to get at least as many as John Kerry did in 2004, which would have been 59 million. I think that keep in mind, she's going to get 50 million no matter what. In fact, you could say that she's going to get about 55 million votes no matter what. No matter who was running on the Republican side, she's going to get about that many. So can she then get that additional 4 million to get to where John Kerry did in 2004? And keep in mind, 12 years later, there are more voters in this country than there were then. The country is a bigger place, more larger population, more people of voting age. And I don't want to even, if you're going to talk to me about voter fraud, I don't want to hear it. There is voter fraud that goes on out there. I do not believe it's enough that could sway an election one way or the other. In any case, so if she gets 59 million of the popular vote, we know what that means. We know then that Donald Trump has to get at least 60 million. In fact, he probably is going to have to get 61, 62 million. In fact, the election could maybe look a lot like 2004, where it comes down to one state, maybe Florida, maybe Ohio, maybe Pennsylvania, maybe Missouri, maybe Colorado. It's just hard to say. The difference between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton winning. Because I do think that this year that voting at least for the major parties is going to be down. So it makes sense to me that there are less people voting just because of turnout than, say, 2008, Barack Obama, and in 2008 and 2012, because I guess in 2012 we had 124 million people vote, something like that. So it may be down from there. So how many votes can Donald Trump really get if you already consider that Hillary Clinton is going to get 59 million? Do you think that he is going to get more votes than George W. Bush did in 2004? George W. Bush at that time, fairly popular president. The Democrats threw everything at him, and he got the most votes of any Republican in the history of the country, way more than Ronald Reagan, mainly because there's more people now than there was in the 1980s. See, that's where, when I start thinking about it in those terms, that's why I don't see Donald Trump winning. When you start adding in everything else, he's high on favorable numbers. The never Trump people like me. What he says, the people that dislike him anyway. You start adding a nomination process where he has gotten less votes than any Republican nominee in recent memory. When you start adding that all up, does it sound like he can get to 62 million people to vote for him? To me, it doesn't. Somebody may flip around and say, well, look at Hillary Clinton. How do you think that she's going to get 59 million people to vote for her when she surely is more disliked than John Kerry is? John Kerry, as much as we may not like him, doesn't have as many scandals out there as Hillary Clinton does. That may all be true. However, I'm already factoring in, you got to keep in mind something, that Barack Obama got 69 million Democrats to go out and vote for him in 2008, about 65 million in 2012. You would need a drop like between George W. Bush, a bigger drop than there was between George W. Bush and John McCain between 2004 and 2008 for Hillary Clinton to lose that many votes from what Barack Obama got in 2012. Just the addition and subtraction of all of it. And that's considerable. It's just considerable to think that Hillary Clinton, let's say, could drop from the Democrats could vote 65 million strong in 2012 to drop down to 57 million, a drop of 7 million, 8 million people. I'm sorry, people. I just don't see it. I just do not see it. I know if you're going to tell me that she's not going to get as many of the popular vote as Barack Obama did in 2012, you know what I'm going to tell you? I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to tell you, yeah, you're right. Probably. But for her to drop down 5 million, 6 million, 7 million, you start getting to that 7 million, 8 million number, and I just don't see it. That would be a drop of over 10%. That would be considerable. And you see then all these numbers adding up that Donald Trump is going to have a very, very difficult time. And I still stick to my point that Hillary Clinton, those Democrats who are all Bernie Sanders people, they're going to come around. A lot of them. Not most of them. They're going to be those people who hold out and don't vote and maybe write in Bernie Sanders this year. And I guess you could compare them to the never Trump people like myself. I realize that in the end, I'm not sure how many never Trumpers there are going to be. I don't know. And people will say, well, there's going to be a lot less of them come November because they're going to have to imagine Hillary Clinton. That may be the case, but it could also be the opposite. It depends what Donald Trump does between now and then. And what he says and what he does, he could actually continue to turn more people off. So there's a lot of ways that this can work. And I think that in the end, I think that Hillary Clinton is just about guaranteed 60 million. When I really, really sit down and think about it, she's going to get about 60 million of the popular vote. which means Donald Trump has to get 61 million or 62 million or 63 million. Once again, getting up to that record-breaking number that is totally the opposite of what has gone on in the primary process. I could be totally wrong. But I just wanted to frame it for you in mere numbers and try to keep the personalities and the issues out of it as much as possible. I don't think to think that, let's put it this way. Barack Obama got 68, 69 million votes in 2008. Do you really think that Hillary Clinton is going to get 10 million votes less than he did when it comes to this year in 2016, for her to only get 58, 59 million? 10 million Democrats less. That would be a drop of, 13%, 14%? Something like that. I'm doing the math in my head. It's considerable. What's 1/6? Yeah, it's like 17% or something. That's crazy. Drop of 17% between 2008 and 2016. I just don't see it. She's going to get in the 60s, and Donald Trump is going to have to get over that, and I don't think he's going to be able to. So let's move on to something else now that I've portrayed that horror story for you. Did you see, going on to new business, new stuff, did you see this act by Bryce Harper? You know who Bryce Harper is? He is a baseball player for the Washington Nationals. Great player. Already teams early. He's only, 22, 23, and already he's getting the Barry Bonds treatment. Teams pitching around him, walking him. And there was something that happened last night. He got thrown out of a game. He's known as being a hothead. By the way, he's from Las Vegas, and I can actually remember when he was playing in high school in the news. I remember him being in the news in high school. I remember then him playing at the Community College of Charleston, which is because it's named after Charleston Boulevard, which is in Las Vegas. I remember that. This guy who's just ripping it up all over the place in Southern Nevada baseball. And now he's playing for the Washington Nationals. And even back then, when he was 17, 18, he was known as being a little bit of a hothead, just standing out for not just his play but his mouth. So he got thrown out of the game last night for arguing balls and strikes, and then the Nationals won in a walk-off home run bottom of the ninth. Bryce Harper comes back out into the field to celebrate with his teammates, and he takes just a few seconds to point at the umpire who threw him out of the game, which was the home plate umpire, pointed at the umpire and told him, F you, and then went back to celebrating with his teammates. Now, there is so much and so I've listened, since that happened, I've listened to Pittsburgh sports radio, people talk about it. I've read a couple articles on it, sports writers about it, and for the most part, they seem to be okay with it. Because, he's just having a great time. And there was so much that when I saw that, I said, isn't that kind of what's going on in politics in the United States right now? I saw what he did, and I've seen a video of it. I'm not a Washington Nationals fan. You know me. I'm a Pittsburgh Pirates fan. There is so much that is indicative of our culture in that. Not just that there's one guy who did this. It's not that. It's the acceptance of it. It's the acceptance of it. You can't control what any one person is going to do at the end of a baseball game. But certainly, the people who watch it can form their own opinions. And there's way too many people that just see that as Bryce being Bryce. Now, see, the problem I have with it is something that I mention on this show once in a while that we tend to forget about. And if you think that I'm going to compare this to what's going on with Donald Trump, you're right. Because a lot of what has gone on with Donald Trump in the last 8 months is not about politics. It's really about our culture, about our expectations, and what we think is good for our culture and what we think is bad for our culture. See, I suppose that any one baseball player or any one particular athlete can do what Bryce Harper did and get away with it. The problem I have is, what if 10 people do that? 10 players do that on a team? What if 20 players do it? What if a whole team does it? What if a whole NFL football team, and on game days, what do they suit up? 51 players or something like the 51-man roster or something like that? Because in baseball, during the most of the season, you only dress 25 players. What if you have an entire American football team, 51 players strong, that at the end of a game yell at one of the refs, F you? Now maybe whether that referee deserves it or not, whether he got something wrong, whatever the case may be, what is that good for sports? See, the problem I have is that once you start approving something of one person, if you are in a country where everybody is equal, then that means that everybody gets to do it. And so I ask you, would it be okay if all of the Washington Nationals last night yelled F you at that umpire for throwing Bryce Harper out of the game? Probably not. Despite what we think about, and I've been one to criticize Major League umpires. I think that eventually they're working their way right out of the major leagues with the way balls and strikes are called. I think the technology is there to call balls and strikes with computers, with sensors like they do in tennis, and just to take the human element out of it. Because that's where most disagreements now occur in that sport. Still, going to the point and maybe even getting away with yelling F you at an umpire, it certainly takes away from the spirit of the game. I know it's big money. A lot of money at stake. A lot of advertising at stake. Once again, though, you can't control any one person's behavior. It's how everybody else thinks about it. How they think about it, what they do about it, what they say about it. And what I heard for the most part is, wow, that Bryce Harper, he sure does make baseball fun. And see, when I see what has gone on in politics the last 8 months, there's a reason that Donald Trump has gotten the attention that he has. And really, it's the Bryce Harper effect. It is, man, Donald Trump, he sure makes politics fun. All the name calling, the drama, calling people out, doing this, doing that. And I think that that's the reason that he's gotten as much attention he has. And I think that's the reason that he has gotten as many votes as he has. I'm not sure, despite what those people say, that they vote for him because of the issues, because we really don't know what his issues are in regards to Donald Trump's. Instead, I think that people vote for him because they think he's dang entertaining. So what happens if you not only have one Donald Trump running for president down the road, you have 2, you have 5, you have 10, who really don't want to talk about the issues, but they really do want to talk about how a guy's father might have been responsible for the assassination of a former president. And they want to talk about how another guy might not be eligible to be president because of his birth certificate, no matter what a bunch of judges said. And what happens if a bunch of presidential candidates start making fun of women and attacking reporters and telling people they should be... I just want to know. I just want to know. Then what? What happens if we could go through an entire election season in the United States without policy coming up at all? But no, it's just about the personal stuff and rumors and TMZ stuff and National Enquirer stuff. Is that good for our country? I mean, I know it'd be dang entertaining. There'd be lots of laughs. I get it. Lots of laughs. Lots of water cooler talk. Everybody would be so entertained. It would be bread and circuses every day, every week, every month for that entire election season. Is that good for the country? See, once you start to think of it that way, instead of just thinking, well, Donald Trump is just Donald Trump. Now, we should be thankful that it seems, at least right now, May 10th, 2016, that there is only one Donald Trump in this country. Okay? It seems. That could change. But what if there were more? And they all decided to run for president. And they all wanted to run their campaigns that way. Not based on how people's lives were going to be affected, but whether they're entertaining or not. Whether they get headlines or not. Whether they can stay in the news or not. What then? Because once again, just going back to the Bryce Harper example, once you excuse one person for doing it, don't be surprised if 2, 5, 10, 20, 100 also want to do it the same way, especially if they think that they're going to get attention out of it. If they think they're going to make it on SportsCenter or on ESPN. If they think that they're going to get free media without having to pay for it. Once again, this is probably why you understand that I'm not a guy who really loves the majority, because this is what happens when that happens. So when I saw that, and I just kind of knew how much attention Bryce Harper was going to get from it. And he knows that. It's the reason he does it. He knows the cameras are on him. But it's certainly, I mean, maybe one guy can get away with it in baseball. What if it, once again, a whole team? Could Major League Baseball stand that? Would the game continue to have its character and its integrity if after every game the baseball players yelled F you to the umpires? What do you think would happen? But somehow only one person doing it is no big deal. This is the problem that I have. This argument has also popped up for me with the war on drugs and people who want to legalize it. Because once you allow one person to get high and destroy their lives, you know what? A lot of other people are going to jump in. When you okay it. When you just say, you know what? There's not much we can do about it as a country. Go ahead. Because a lot of people are going to jump on that train, unfortunately. And then what? What are the rest of us supposed to do about it? The rest of us sober people. How long can we insulate ourselves from this? Probably not for very long. So when it comes to Trump, it's kind of the same thing. As we, the people who really believe that policy is important, how long can we insulate ourselves from those people who only want the entertainment part of it? Because entertainment is not reality, and people will pick entertainment over reality every time, no matter how much they may watch reality shows, because we, of course, know they aren't reality. I just wanted to make that point, but I got to go to the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
The voice of American conservatism. WRS Digital, Red State Talk Radio.
And we are back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I want to continue on this comparison, this analogy between Bryce Harper and Donald Trump just for a little bit. Now, there's the other part of this, the flip side of this. There are going to be all those people who don't like what Bryce Harper did. But really the reason they don't like what Bryce Harper did is just because he's not on their team. If you remember last year, I wouldn't watch my Pittsburgh Steelers because they got Michael Vick, a dog killer. I don't even own a dog. Frankly, I'll watch my brother's dog, as I've told you about. But you know what? I do it for my brother's wife because I love them. It's what family does. But really, me taking care of dogs and things like that is really not my thing. As much as I like animals, and I'll play with them, but taking care of them, I see that as somebody else's deal. But even so, I stuck to my principles in not watching the Pittsburgh Steelers this past year. And there were many people who disliked Mike Vick when he played for the Eagles or whoever else, Atlanta, and this all went down with the dogs. Then when it came to the Steelers, they thought he was the worst guy in the world. But once he came to the Steelers, it's like everything changed. So he was a bad guy on somebody else's team, but he's a good guy on the Steelers. So we have that going on in our culture too, whereas there will be people who will dislike Bryce Harper for doing what he did, but he was on their team and he got thrown out of a game, then did that after. Those fans would love him. It drives you nuts. And see, this is the issue I think I also have with Donald Trump supporters, that I think they're kind of the same way. They love Donald Trump's tactics and all those things, but they despise it if somebody else does it. Whereas I think those of us who rely more on policy and want to talk about the actual issues that affect people's lives, we don't mind other people talking. We don't mind liberals talking about the issues because that's what we want to talk about. Whereas Donald Trump supporters, they want to talk about everybody else's flaws in their personal life. They don't want to talk about their candidates. In fact, you'll see it's almost the exact opposite. We saw Laura Ingraham in the tank for Donald Trump. Somebody talks to her about the lack of morals that Donald Trump has, which she said, well, Ronald Reagan got divorced. That's how they defend it. After for decades, Laura Ingraham talking about the lack of character that Bill Clinton had. It's so hard. And you know why all these things pop up is because it's hard to be consistent. It's difficult in our lives to be consistent. That morals thing, that character thing, that integrity thing, man, they can really cut back on a person having a lot of fun, can't they? Can't they? Let's be truthful. Man, they can really cut back on us getting it. When we have character integrity, man, you don't get any attention for that. You don't get on the news for that. Nice guys finish last. And this is what you get. So there's all that. I just thought of that. Just a little clip. Bryce Harper. What is it? 15-second video that you can see on YouTube now, 20 seconds. Got so much out of that. There's so much that goes on there that he'll probably get away with it. I hope he doesn't, but he probably will. Don't know if that'll stop him or not. But the genie is out of the bottle, I think, regarding this now. In sports and now in politics. And it's a dang shame. Let's move on to something else. Going along those lines even further, but still moving on to a little bit of a different topic. Here's something. I wrote this at redstate.com, the other Red State, this past weekend. I've started writing a couple comments here and there. I really don't, as you know, I don't argue with people online. I say what I have to say and I move on. I don't cater to trolls. I don't argue with trolls on Twitter, Facebook, anywhere else. I just don't have anything to do with them. It's very easy for me to let things go in one ear and out the other. But to hear these people, and the reason I'm bringing up Dennis Miller is because somebody needs to take Facebook away from Dennis Miller, by the way. The guy is losing it a little bit. And as I say that, as much as I've liked Dennis Miller over the years. But he doesn't tweet anymore. He doesn't have his radio show anymore. But he must be on Facebook all the time. And it must be when he's like in the worst moods. And to go see what I mean, you need to go to his Twitter feed. But he went on there yelling at people like myself, who are people who will not vote for Hillary Clinton. And why don't you, all of you people, just admit that it's a vote for Hillary Clinton? And he says he now trusts us, these people who will bail on the Republican Party. I trust them less than I trust the people who will vote for Hillary Clinton. That's what he said. You could check it for yourself. I have a couple things to say about this, as you can imagine. Here, I think, is the flaw in the thinking of voting for Donald Trump, right, this time around. The truth is this, and this isn't an original thought. I'll get to the original thought in a second. The truth is this. If you accept Donald Trump as being the Republican nominee this year, you will accept anybody. You'll accept anybody. He is so far away, so far down the ladder, down the evolutionary scale, from Mitt Romney, John McCain, despite what I may think about their policies, Donald Trump is so far off that it's easy to say that there seems to be no line to be drawn in the sand. Now, I know what the response is to this because I see it. I see it in comment sections at hotair.com, redstate.com, nationalreview.com, all these places I go to. And by the way, I haven't been to the Drudge Report, Breitbart.com in 2 months. Both websites that I used to use all the time for the show. I don't go there anymore. But you can see people saying, well, if you'll accept a Republican, you'll accept anybody. And what do Trump people say that are going to decide to vote for him? Well, this is just a one-time thing for those people who are not the real Trump cult people, but the people who maybe wanted Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio and now resigned to the fact that they're going to have to vote for Donald Trump. Why? Because Hillary Clinton is so bad. We have to keep Hillary Clinton out of the White House. Okay. I see what you're saying. Why do you think it's going to get any better in 2020 for Democrats? Do you actually think that their nominee in 2020 is going to be better than Hillary Clinton? Because it's probably going to be Elizabeth Warren. How do you think about that? And you know what you're going to say in 2020? You're going to tell me, we got to vote. Hey, now we got this guy who's even crazier than Donald Trump. We got to vote for the guy that's crazier than Donald Trump because don't you understand? It's Elizabeth Warren. You can't allow her to get into office. And then we get to 2024, and the Democrats are running Joseph Stalin's great-great-great-great-grandson or granddaughter. And you know what those people who want to give in to the Republican Party are going to say? Well, you got to vote against Joseph Stalin's great-great-great-great-grandson. Doesn't matter who the nominee is. And then in 2028, when we have Kim Jong-un's first cousin running for president as a Democrat, you know what you're going to tell me? Well, you got to vote for this guy who's just a little bit to the right of that just because to keep him out of office. It's never going to get better on the Democrat side. So what you're saying is, really, this feels to me like one of those LSAT questions. If 5 guys are sitting around a table and figure out which one has the spaghetti in front of them, if you do the logic on all this, what you're going to find out is what they're really saying is you just vote for the Republican no matter what. Because we know the Democrat nominee is never going to get any better. Now, I just want to know, I know I can't talk to the cultists, but for those people who are now saying that they were against Donald Trump before, but now we're going to vote for him because Hillary Clinton's so bad, when can we start to free up this? At what point are we allowed to say that each choice in the major political parties is unpalatable? I just want you to tell me. Because as long as you allow your decisions to be dictated by what the Democrats do, you're going to be holding to a party that is not earning your vote. And what those people will learn is they'll be able to nominate anybody. The Republican Party. You understand that? Because it seems to me that when I start to hear people say, well, we have to just vote against Hillary Clinton. Well, first of all, we've been doing that. We've been voting against Al Gore and against John Kerry and against Barack Obama and against Barack Obama again. And we know where that's gotten us. Nowhere. It's gotten us nowhere. Can't we just admit that? But sometime when I read these people who are now telling me that I should give in and vote for Donald Trump, I get the idea that it's like they're trying to put me into some waiting game or something. Do you see what I'm saying? Well, you need to do this this time because next time it's going to be different. That's what he told me in 2012. And see, what's obvious to me is that these people are allowing their hatred of Hillary Clinton to get in the way of their better thinking. Remember, you do not need to hate somebody to beat the person, to want to beat the person. Remember that. It's probably been one of the biggest flaws that we as conservatives have made over the last 20 years. We grew to hate Bill Clinton. We grew to hate Hillary Clinton. We grew to hate the Democrats and hate Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid. When really we should all have saved that emotion and just thought about winning. Instead, we got too caught up in making fun of them and hating them and writing parody songs about them and everything else. And we see where that got us. Nowhere. And it's that continued hatred that is trying to convince people like us that you need to grin and bear it this time. We'll make it better next time. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. When I okay a vote for Donald Trump, I okay anything that the Republican Party can nominate. Because once again, what you're telling me is as long as the Republican candidate is just a little bit to the right of the Democrat candidate, no matter how to the left the Democrats go. And they're going to continue to go left, more left, more left, more left, more left. As long as the Republican may seem in some ways, and we don't even know what Donald Trump thinks, but if we just go a little shade 1 point on the scale to the right, that should be good enough. Now, the problem is, I know people don't believe that. I know what they're trying to convince me to do, they really don't believe in. It's just an emotional response. I hope I've explained this well. It takes a little bit of logic to figure that all out. Because if they're going to tell you that the Democrat is so bad this round, that's what people are going to tell you from now to the end of time. They're never going to say, you know what, the Democrat is a viable choice this time. They're never going to say that. It's always going to be against. And it seems to me that all they're really trying to do is empower themselves. That the Republican Party, the people who run it, I'm not going to call them establishment, but it is a private organization. They need people to vote for them. That's what they're going to continue to say. And I think that when you give in to whoever the nominee is, you're giving into a marketing plan. That's what you're going to do. Because once again, Hillary Clinton is not a one-time thing. They will come up, once again, the people who are running the Republican Party will come up then with another person to be against in 2020. This is the most important election. It comes up every 4 years. Most important election of our lifetime. Well, you know what? We're going to find out. We're actually going to find out because I think there's going to be a decent amount of Republicans who aren't going to fall for it anymore. And say, oh, really? You know what? We're going to call you on that. That if we don't vote for Hillary Clinton, that things are just going to be the worst. And they may be. But maybe you'll learn your lesson too. And maybe all you people who have given in to the Donald Trumps and to the moderates in the past will finally get the point that we should have made 20 years ago. The truth is this. We as conservatives, we should have never given in from the beginning. We should have never given in for Bob Dole in 1996. Should have never given in for George W. Bush in 2000, 2004. We should have never done it. Because you know what we've gotten out of it? Zip. That's what we've gotten. Had we made a stand back before September 11th, before Iraq, before the debt got to $16 trillion, $18 trillion in debt, some of those things might not have happened. And guess what? On top of that, you wouldn't have Donald Trump possibly being president this year. And dare I say it, if you don't make a stand now, what's to say 20 years from now? Guess what? Donald Trump might seem like the sane person. He's only bad now in relation to all the people before him. 20 years from now, he might seem like the sanest person ever. Remember, Jimmy Carter seemed like a kook in 1980. He looks like Mr. Reasonable in the Democrat Party now. Remember, there was a time when a bunch of Republicans hated JFK in 1960. He's a Republican now. And you tell us to just keep going along with this. Really? Okay. Getting back to Dennis Miller, I just have a few words for him. You have to remember something. He quit his show. He gave up. He didn't want to do this anymore. But he has no problem going on Facebook and making fun of people like me. He doesn't have the courage to have a show again where people can call in and tell him how wrong he is. No, he just wants to do his little Facebook thing now. Dennis Miller, unfortunately, is a quitter. He had an opportunity in his position and having all those listeners he did to do the right thing. He quit. He gave up. And I should add on something else on top of all of this. He was the one who voluntarily went out and went around with Mitt Romney and said how great a guy Mitt Romney is. Well, guess what? Mitt Romney is also having a hard time reconciling voting for Donald Trump in 2016. So I just got to know, Dennis Miller, who's changed, you or Mitt? I just want to know. It's disgusting. He says that he can't trust people like me anymore, Republicans who will abandon the party. Meanwhile, he readily would admit on his show that he would go out of his way not to talk to his liberal kook friends because it's not worth it. So me, the guy who acts on principle, is bad. He, the guy who doesn't have the courage to talk to his friends about politics and argue with them, is the courageous one. Okay. All right. Okay, Dennis Miller. You know what? If you're going to act like that, maybe it's a good thing you're not on radio anymore. Maybe it's a good thing. It's disgusting. It really is disgusting. Drives me nuts. So, one more thing about this, and this is what makes this all continuing to be very fascinating. Have you looked at this list of people who have now come around to Donald Trump's side and those who haven't? You try figuring this out. So on one hand, you have guys like Bobby Jindal, Rick Perry, Rand Paul, and John Bolton who now have come out and said, yes, we have to vote for Donald Trump. On the other hand, you have guys like Lindsey Graham, Ben Sasse, Mitt Romney, Bill Kristol, the Bushes, a lot of other prominent conservatives, and I just didn't pick out. There's women who, of course, fall on. Marlee Matlin, not the actress, the woman who's married to James Carville. What's her name? Can't remember. She has converted. She used to be a huge Republican donor. She's converted, and she's changed to the Libertarian Party. So it's being that I talked about Captain America's Civil War, lines being drawn, you can now see the line being drawn here. Slowly but surely between those who are going to go along with anybody but Hillary and those people who are anti-both. Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting group on each side. Not exactly how you would expect it to break down like this. You'd accept the Bushes being such good Republican people their whole lives to go along with Trump even though he's the nominee. That's not going to happen. On the other hand, you would expect somebody like Bobby Jindal, who went on and on about how bad Donald Trump was, to be on the never Trump side. No, he says now we have to give in. See, this is not helping anything. And that's one more thing that's tough about politics, especially when you get a guy like Donald Trump involved. Unfortunately, then, other politicians feel like they have to be outrageous as he is. Now, if you're going to be outrageous and be truthful and stick to those words, I have no problem with it. I'll give you all the credit in the world. Bobby Jindal and these other candidates who said all these not crazy things, but truthful things about how crazy Donald Trump is, they're right. But if they weren't willing to stick to it somewhere down the road, they shouldn't have said it. So what ended up being so right during some of those debates is now so wrong because their actions don't go along with it. Once again, getting back to they're so afraid of Hillary. Once again, though, if you accept Donald Trump, you'll accept anybody. Whereas on this side, once again, I mentioned Mitt Romney before in relation to Dennis Miller, Lindsey Graham, who would have thunk it, Ben Sasse, good conservative, he wrote recently his Facebook page. They're all together. Graham, Ben Sasse, and Mitt Romney probably could not be put in any group together generally, but in this, they are all united. Go figure. But I got to go. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. Go to edwarddentzel.com where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. You can also find them at Podbean, Podomatic, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Go to edwarddentzel.com/book where you can download for free the first chapter of my next novel called The Comebacks. You can email me, edwarddentzel@reagan.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Dentzel Domain. Find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. It's been a pleasure talking to you tonight. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.